We've been working through the working genius a little bit, and now we talked about the different stages of work the first time we talked about just the basic description of the event. This time we're talking about the differences between responsive geniuses and disruptive geniuses. So I found it very helpful to me because of just knowing myself, but we'll walk through this and we'll make it there. So you have to start with a big idea. So the big idea for today is this: awareness takes you to recognition, and recognition takes you to action and service. So the way I wrote it out was this: awareness equips you to recognize, which enables you to act. So having the awareness is, am I a responsive person or am I a disruptive person? Helps you to, okay, now I'm aware of this, now I can respond to this, now I can act. So awareness equips you to recognize, which enables you to act. So let's define responsiveness real quick and disruptive. So when I looked at the word responsiveness, I came up with a couple of key words. The first one is evaluate. So if you're responsive, well, let me stop before we do this. I should have done this before. Do you guys know where your geniuses are? Do you know if you're responsive or disruptive? All right, so how many of you are wonder, discernment, or enablement? Raise your hand. How many of you have both of those, like two in that category? Okay, so we've got some double responders. And then you've got disruptors here. So disruptors are the innovators, the innovators, the galvanizers, and the tenacity. How many of you have those? All right, so I see a lot of hands. So how many of you have them in both? All right, how many of you have them in just one area? Okay, so are you double disruptor? Or, okay, good. So welcome to the club. We'll talk about that. So responsive, good that we understand that now. Responsive is you're thinking about evaluating and responding, okay? A responsive person, a lot of times you could get the understanding that you could be that person that just waits for other people to say things, or you're waiting for other people to bring things to you, or you're responding to the world as you see it around you. So the description that I have they have in the book is they react to the world around them. So if you're a wanderer, discerner, and an enabler, you react to the world around you, your environment around you, or the promptings of the needs of your colleagues. So if you're if you've got responsive genius, you're actually probably viewed as a generally good person. Like, this is a likable person. Whenever I bring something to them, they give me stuff. They're there responding to me. Then you go to the disruptive. And I can pick on the disruptive because that's where I am. They like to stimulate and start. Those are the key words. The description that the book gives, they provoke change in the world, in their organization, and in the people around them. Nobody likes change. When I taught the class organizational change, everybody was like, why do we have to change? This thing's like, we've done it like this always. My dad was a pastor for 40 years, and how many times I heard growing up, this is the way we've always done it, or do it the way we did it last year. And I'm like, I don't remember how we did it last year. So the whole idea of change is something that we just naturally don't like. I think it starts when we're babies and people try to change us. Even though we know we needed to be changed, we pitch a fit. I don't know why I've thought of that, but I just thought of that this morning. So the working geniuses are Invention, Galvanizing, and Tenacity. So disruptive people, your geniuses, your tendency is to look at like, okay, there's something that needs to change. Let me go change it. Oh, the team needs to be pushed. Let me go push it. So these are like a lot of coaches would probably, if they love coaching, they would probably find themselves in a disruptive place. So let's look at responsive and disruptive together. Both are needed. So if you look at the stages of work, ideation, that's probably a lot of, you need disruptive there because you've got ideas, and you also need responsive where you're looking at the world around you going, because people who just come up with ideas without looking at the world around them are idiots. And I'm telling that because that's myself. People who just like to change things and come up with ideas without taking the time to go, what does the student really need? What does Cedarville really need at that time? So you see both of them are there. You go to the next one, the activation, the part that nobody really likes to do. You've got Discernment, which would be Weston, and you've got Galvanizing. So you got a discerner who's like, oh, Brian, give me your ideas. And then you got a galvanizer that's like, all right, we've talked about these ideas long enough. Let's get people moving. And they're like the cowboys trying to push the cattle across the field. You see, so there's a disruptive, or there's a responsive, and there's a disruptive. Then you get to the implementation of work, enablement, tenacity. So you've got enabler, Leslie, who is like, hey, what do you got? What do these galvanizers got for me? Okay, I'm going to do it. And then, so that's responsive. And then you've got the tenacity where it's just like, get out of my way and just let me get the job done. How many times have your tenacity in the room that you've been working on a project and somebody just wants to go like, hey, I wonder how this should work. And you're just like, can we just get the job done? I know there's a couple of people in the room because I saw their hands go up. So the whole idea, the big idea that we want to hit on today is awareness equips you. So awareness of if you're disruptive or you're responsive, it equips you to recognize. Because I think you need to recognize a couple things. You need to recognize your tendencies, you need to recognize the situation, and you need to recognize the work that you're in so that you can begin to see where you could be. And it allows you to, enables you to act. So awareness equips you to recognize, which enables you to act. All right. So we've been going through it this way. Awareness is just a knowledge of. So we're going to talk about that first. Then we're going to go into buy-in, give you some ideas of, okay, how can I kind of try this? And then we'll go into ownership. So let's start with awareness. Awareness, self-awareness. The best leader is a self-aware leader. The book said that. The best leader is a self-aware leader. So your idea of where is your working genius fall? How many of you are a double disruptor? Okay. Let me just say I'm sorry. But also what that is our tendencies is not to be one to wait on others. Our tendencies is going to be, there's a leak at Renova. I'm not going to call Weston. I'm going to clean it. There's a project that we have with marketing. I'm not going to think through, no, we're just going to get it done. We're going to make sure people have it. We're going to check Basecamp. There's something going on with CAB at decoration setup night. I'm not going to stop and go, I just wonder. No, she's just going to be like, let's do this, 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 and this. You see the danger of what could be in that if that's your tendency? Your tendency could be like you could run over people, back up the truck and run them over again, back up the truck and run them over again. Now, that's not necessarily bad to be a double disruptor. It's just understanding that the way God wired you. If you go to Romans 12, the second part of the first part is the idea of like some of you are this and some of you are this. We are double disruptors. God designed us to be like doers and goers and movers. Now, how many of you are double responsive? Anybody in the room? All right. Great people. Because I like working with you. Because you don't argue. I'm just kidding. That's not true. But the idea is like double responders, you've got to understand that your tendency is to wait. On other people. You are really great at showing deference to other people. But the danger of that is that if you're waiting and we really need to hear your voice in discernment, or we really need your enablement, or we really need you to stop and go, I wonder what's going on so we can figure this out. I wonder if you're just responding always, your tendency is going to be to wait. So when you have, the rest of you probably have one. How many of you have one in both? All right. That's normal. I'm sorry for the people like me that we're abnormal. But that's normal because I think the way God designed the way work should be done is like there are times that you are moving, but there's also times that you stop. So in understanding your tendencies, you're going to need to know that when you come into a new job or a new relationship or a new church or a new community, are you the responder or are you the disruptor? And in understanding that, you'll be able to have deeper relationships. So first, I think you need to understand yourself. Second, you need to understand the people around you. So if you're working at Renova and you're working with Rachel's going to be that double disruptor. She's going to be that person that's just moving and moving and moving. But Rachel needs to stop and understand, who am I working with? And if Rachel's working with a bunch of double responders, it could be like Rachel's running over them, backing up, and running back over them. She's not doing it to be rude, but it's understanding the people that you're working with. Understanding the people, like in Romans 12, where God brought you into this body, and understanding, are they responsive or are they disruptive? And meaning sometimes for me, I need to shut up and stop and ask Jesse, think through this. Am I missing something? I need to shut up and stop and look at it and go, okay, Weston, poke holes in this idea. But if every time that I had an idea and Weston was in the room, he poked holes in the idea, we wouldn't have a good relationship, because I would be viewing him as like, why are you killing all my ideas? And he'd be viewing me as like, why are you an idiot? So the whole idea of that is understanding where you are and where other people are. I've got to understand enablement tenacity so that when I'm driving, I'm realizing the human capital that I'm asking people to give because of the work that I'm asking to give. An example of that is the Renova cart. We've been talking about it for a couple of months. We took a couple of months to figure out the best structure for it, because the discerner, Weston, was like, Brian, pump your brakes. We got to care for the people. So that's where you've got to know yourself and you've got to know others. So like when my wife she is a discerner and she is a enabler. So she is a double responder. I'm a double disruptor. So like I come in and I just want to, like, I'm a hurricane. Okay, I'm the tornado in the family, and Danielle's more the damage control. She's more FEMA. She's like, okay, we got to respond to this. So at times I can be going, and then she's just like looking at me like, where are you even going? Don't you have this to do and this to do? So some of that is understanding each other allows us to respect each other more, because it allows me to stop and just go like, man, Danielle, okay, nobody's ever going to doubt this, that I really need Danielle. But the idea of it is like, but stopping and going, Danielle, what do you think of this idea? Instead of just going a million miles a minute, really demonstrates to her the love that I have and the honor that I have for her. Do that for your friends. Think about your pastors. Are they double disruptors, or where are they in the spectrum of this thing? You've got some pastors that can think of ideas like outside of their head, but they're just thinking of ideas and throwing things out there. They don't want you to do it all. But how do you, as a discerner, as an enabler, as a tenacity person, help that pastor, help that organization? So you got to know yourself. You got to know others. And then you also have to know the situation. So we are, where are we, Leslie? 2 weeks from decorating for Christmas. All right, that's a perfect example. We're more in that activation phase right now. We can still plan ideas, but right now Leslie doesn't need me to be like, let me think about how many more trees I can buy. Do you know what I love to do? Buy Christmas trees, especially the 12-foot Christmas trees. I just love to buy that stuff. So at this point, as a double disruptor, I want to keep doing that. I want to keep walking around every building and going, oh, we could put this here and we can do this here. And I'm like, wait a second. The plane is getting the stages of work, right? So the plane is getting close to the ground. So my disruptor on innovation doesn't need to be a part of this equation right now. My galvanizer needs to be a part. So now I'm operating on one cylinder instead of two. When we get down to the week of campus Christmas decoration, I need everybody in this room that if I come up with new ideas to look at me and say, it's not time. All right, can we practice that? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's not very convincing. Okay, I'm going to come up with this new idea. It's the day of decoration. What are you going to tell me? No, Brian, it's not time. Fine, whatever. But the whole idea is understanding the situation. Now, people that are double responders are going to be in this dream phase. So we're starting to plan getting started. So Katie's working with that. Eli's working with that. So we're getting ready to plan some getting started. We're in the dream phase right now, right? Because we're still like 200 and some days away from getting started. When we get to July, y'all got to look at me and I've got to look at other people and I got to be like, slow down. But also right now, if you're a responder, your tendency is to like, wow, we got time. We got time. It'll come later. I don't need to worry about this right now. That's the danger of the responsive. The danger of the disruptor is you're always changing. The danger of the responsive is that you're just willing to wait. So in that, you've got to know the situation. So right now in ideation, we need to be thinking and churning out ideas so that we can get closer to where we need to be for getting started. All right, so that's awareness. So buy-in. So you, first of all, in awareness, you know yourself, you know others, and you know the situation. In buy-in, here's the thing. We looked at it last year. You got to seek to understand. If you want to make this work, if you want to understand how people work, number one, you got to seek to understand other people. That's extremely biblical. You also have to seek to understand the situation. If you look at Scripture, if you look at Jesus in Scripture, there were times that he was really, really gentle. And then there were other times, like in the temple courts, that he was not so gentle. But Jesus looked at things from the perspective of the situation. Now, he had the great privilege and the great opportunity and the great responsibility of being God, so he knew everything. But the idea of it is, as a Christ follower, as somebody who loves other people and is commanded to love other people, you've got to know yourself and them, but you also have to know the situation. So you got to seek to understand. Really seek to understand. Because if I'm a double disruptor, and I go up to somebody who's double responsive, my first reaction is, why aren't you me? Why aren't you working? You are lazy. And that is completely wrong. And they might look at me as like, why can't you ever just chill out? It seems like work is your God, and you're an idiot because you can't ever stick with one idea. But it's the idea if we could seek to understand each other, we're going to understand and love each other better. Then the second thing in buy-in, I want to challenge you on this. Seek to be understood. So it's not your job just to understand the people around you. It's your job to make sure that they understand you. Not first, but second. It's your job to make sure that your spouse understands your feelings, your thoughts. It's your job to make sure your boss at work understands all these things about you. It's your job to make sure that the people you're doing life with understand what make you tick so that they could seek to understand. There's the cycle. The only way that this idea of disruptive and responsive works is if you seek to understand people and you make sure that they understand you. That's buy-in. So that's what it's going to take. Now, ownership. Let's jump right into ownership and then we'll be done. Here's 5 things that I put down. So if you're going to seek to understand and you make sure people understand you and you're going to understand this idea of responsive, you know, the wonder, the discernment, the enablers, and the disruptive, the inventors, the galvanizers, and the tenacity, you've got to do this. You've got to be present and you've got to be involved. You don't just show up to work and go, well, I'm here at work, clock in, clock out. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. You have to be actively involved and you have to be present. You have to be quiet and listen. It's not as hard for the responders. It's more hard for the disruptors. But as a responder, can I challenge you? Don't always listen to what you think you hear. Try to seek to understand the person well. Somebody used to say, I don't hear well. What they meant was, I don't hear that well. So as a responder, you're going to look at a disruptor and you're like, I don't understand this individual. Seek to understand them. Know and serve yourself. That sounds very selfish, but you've got to understand. Don't put yourself in situations if you're a double disruptor that you always have to respond. You know, you put yourself in a situation that works. And it might mean that some jobs that you have in the future aren't a good fit for you. Doesn't mean you quit them the day that you find out they're not a good fit. Maybe you ask those questions, and you should ask those questions before you even take the job. Know and serve others, and then know and serve the situation. So Campus Christmas is the example I want to end on, and then I'll give you some times for questions. We're about 2 weeks out. Right now, CAB is actively involved in doing tree diagrams for buildings. I just finished a diagram for Live at 10 for the Schaumburg Center. The light diagrams are done. And now all this stuff has been given to ops, and they'll start working on it next week. All right? What I don't need is an ops guy to come in and go, well, let me discern if this is a good idea. That was about a month ago, right? So ops, at this point, I need you to embrace where we are in the situation is you're responding to what people have given you. And if you're a galvanizer, you're disrupting your team by making them and forcing them, hey, let's get this done for these people. Let's get this done. Let's use marketing as an example. There are a lot of ideas that you guys might have for the video of Campus Christmas. We're at the point now where we got to start, and I know you already have, but it's no longer thinking about like, what are we going to do? It's planning for how we get it done. And for the rest of you, showing up that night, you're going to be there, and it's one of the most fun nights of the year to decorate for Christmas. But the idea is we don't need you to be disruptors that night in thinking of like new ideas or we need you to be disruptors in how do I push the team to get the work done? How do I embrace what they've already planned? You've got to know the situation. So right now, where the plane is for Campus Christmas is about 15,000 feet, all right? We're descending. We're on final approach. Next week, it'll be at 10,000. Then when we get to that Friday, it's going to be on the ground. And at that point, you're not trying to get the plane back up in the air. So the idea of like now understanding the situation, they don't need a double disruptor on Friday the 22nd. That's not good. They don't need a double responder either. They need somebody who's willing to push the team, push themselves, but also respond to what the situation is. So it is a kind of a cool way of looking at work, is that sometimes work is tense, sometimes work is chill. Where do you need to be in this scale or this spectrum of work? So are you a disruptor? Are you responsive? Both are needed. All right, what questions might you have?